Hello once again, fellow flight simmers and cockpit builders. So I was thinking the other day when I was doing that other video, the last one that I posted, that I had never really gone over my entire setup. I know you guys have seen glimpses of it here and there, as I go through my different videos, and especially the last few that I've done flights showing the camera views. But I've never really gone over every single part of it, or you guys have never really seen the entire thing explained. So I figured that it would be a good idea to do just that. So when I started building my home cockpit, I pretty much started with CH products, yoke and rudder pedals. But shortly after I picked up flight simming again in about 2016, I believe it was, maybe 2017, I got myself this set of Saitek. Basically, this one guy was selling pretty much the yoke, the multi-panel, the switch panel, and one radio. So I put together this little, setup that you see here in this picture, and it was pretty good. I really enjoyed flying a lot more with the Saitek yoke and everything, and with the throttle quadrant. I even, changed it a little bit so that it can be kind of like looking like a 737 throttle quadrant, even though of course not even close. And eventually I ended up getting myself a trim wheel as well. So that's the way it looked at the very beginning. And then eventually I decided, I learned about Art, ArtSim X, which was the predecessor to SimVim Cockpit, and I decided to build myself the overhead panel, which is the very first part that I built. And this is the way it looked, once I installed that. And over here on the right hand side, you can see I was testing around when I just started testing using multiplexer boards. That's what I was doing here. And already since then, I was already using my tablet, to display the FMC there, the MCDU, I should say. So yeah, so that's what it was like, in the early days. That was around early 2017, I guess. And it has taken me about 2 years, to get it to where it is now, which, includes the honeycomb Bravo and the honeycomb Alpha yoke that you see here now. So I'm gonna go ahead and take you on a little video tour explaining pretty much everything in my setup. Okay, so we're gonna start here with a wide angle view of pretty much the entire setup, and then we're gonna zoom in on individual parts, and I'll describe what each one is in case it's not self-explanatory. So starting off way at the top, I have my overhead panel, which I tried to model after the 737 because being that the Zibo is the airliner that I fly the most, and that's what I wanted to have more at my reach. So I included the 4 landing light switches, including the retractable ones. So I mostly always fly the halogen version of the 737-800. And then of course I have all the switches that go along the top, including the engine start switches and the igniter left and right selector. So that's what started this whole project, and it went on from there. So the monitors that I have right now, I have in the center is a 32-inch 1080p monitor. It's an HP. And then on the left I have a 27-inch also 1080p monitor. And then that little one on the right, that is a 10-inch monitor. And that one I only use, lately I've been putting the OBS window on there so that I can see when I'm doing a recording, or the very few times when I've done a live stream, I put the OBS right there so that I can see what is actually being transmitted or recorded. Alright, so we'll go ahead and get started over here on this part. So I have this little panel that I built. It was modeled after the Challenger 300, and that's what I mostly wanted to set out to do, because I thought it was going to be a jet that I was going to fly a lot, but I ended up not liking the displays because of the very tiny text on the navigation display, so I never really fly it. But those buttons now and everything are all assigned for other things. So on that tablet I have, it's a free plugin called X-Plane CDU, and it's basically the FMC for the 737, and it also works with the SSG 747, which I own, but I've never tried it with that one. So it's a nice little free plugin so that I can have that right there instead of having to look for it on my main display. And then right next to that I have the Stream Deck. I got the one with the 15 buttons just because even though I'm not really a streamer, when I was recording videos or trying to do some of those instructional videos, I always found it was very frustrating to try to go from one camera view to another, or to add or remove certain things that I wanted to overlay. So I just figured, why not get one of those and make it a lot easier to do that. Alright, and then so I have my Logitech G Pro keyboard there and a mouse. That one right there is a wired one. On the other side I have a wireless one, which we'll see in a little bit. Alright, then on the bottom there I have another little panel that I built with just a variety of switches, not really modeled after any specific aircraft, but it's switches that I thought that I would be using quite often, so I put those in there. And right above that I have the Saitek panels, the radios I mean, and I have two on the top for the comms, COM1 and COM2, and then the two on the bottom for the nav1 and nav2. And those I am just configuring them, like I said on a previous video, through the X Saitek Panels plugin. Although I do own SPAT Next for Flight Simulator 2020, but since I had everything already working with it, with the other one here, I didn't want to mess around with it. Alright, okay, right above that we have my little EFIS panel. So basically I tried to model that one as the 737 as well, and with the addition that I added the master caution switch right on it, just for convenience, I guess you can say. And almost everything on the EFIS panel is there, except I think the only thing I don't have is the center for the primary flight display, to make it go to a rose or to the arc. I don't have that button there, so I'm actually using a different button to make it do that. But other than that, pretty much everything I need is right there. Alright, now we go right along to the middle here, and we have my little wannabe MCP panel, which once again I tried to model for the 737, but I did not include the displays because since I am not building an actual 737 cockpit, I'm still looking at the little readouts on the airplane itself on the main monitor. So I just wanted the manipulators to be able to change the course, the speed, the heading, the altitude and all that without having to reach over with my mouse and do it on the screen. So for that, it definitely does a great job. Okay, below my little MCP panel, I have the Saitek, or Logitech now, multi-panel. And pretty much that does the same thing as my panel right above it does. It's pretty much to control the autopilot, but I do not use it for that. I do use it to engage the altitude and heading and all that, but I don't use the little knob on the left to be able to switch the altitude or heading or course or any of that. For that I use my MCP panel that I have on top of it. And I changed the pitch trim wheel to do vertical speed, so I could increase and decrease the vertical speed, and the auto throttle I am using. Alright, so right below that little screen 7-segment display there, I just use that to display the DME to the nav1 navigational aid that I have. And below that I have the autopilot reset, the FMC reset, and the auto throttle reset switches. So when you get a warning like you disconnect the autopilot, you'll get the flashing light. I can reset that flashing light and the light will turn off, and it has a light built in, so it'll actually be flashing as well outside. And of course right under that is my honeycomb yoke. Alright, on the floor of course I have my Saitek rudder pedals, and I have my subwoofer for my sound system there. The little cable that you see on the very left right there, that's where I connect the collective for the one I used to fly helicopters. I put it right there, and it goes to a potentiometer that's hooked up to another joystick that I broke, that you will see a little bit later on. And on the right bottom there, you can see the fuel cutoff switch. It's a push-pull switch that I use for the Cessna 172. Alright, moving right along to the right here. I have a wireless mouse right there that I use because it's more convenient with my right hand than to try to reach over to the other one here. And this panel right here, I actually also made originally for the Challenger 300. Like I said before, that I don't really fly. So I have repurposed most of those switches to do other functions on all the different types of airplanes that I fly. Alright, right above that is a honeycomb Bravo. Actually, first that little pad right there is just a USB keypad that I have put a bunch of stickers on, and I use that for all the different views, you know, for to look right, look left, or look 45 degrees to the back, left and right, as well as forward 45 degrees and all that, and my overhead panels and all that. So basically just to make it easy to go to all kinds of different cameras, camera views, and that's what I use that for. And then now we got the honeycomb Bravo there, which I have right now the 737 you know, configuration on there with the 2 engines, the flaps, and the speed brake levers. Alright, I'm loving that one as well. Alright, so right here we have my parking brake lever with a parking brake light. So that one right there, it actually does turn on and off the light when I have the brakes, the parking brakes on. And the little thing on the bottom of that, it was a joystick, and this is the very top of that joystick with a hat switch and a couple of other, which used to be fire buttons, but I have basically made that to move around from the views, you know, when I'm inside the cockpit, to go left, right, forward, and all that. Makes it very easy to move around like that. Alright, and that other little panel right next to the parking brake lever, that one right there I built in order to put some of the encoders to move the GPS dials. Like when you're trying to enter, you know, waypoints into the GNS 430 or 530, it's very frustrating for me to try to do it with a mouse. Maybe it's just because I've been spoiled by all these buttons and everything, so now I try to do as least as possible with a mouse. So that's what I use that for. Alright, let's do that one right there. So that's just another little panel that I made for, it has a auto brake disarmed for the 737. So when you know, you move around the auto brake lever, it will light up, or when you are stopping and you press the brakes manually, then it'll disarm the auto brakes. And then the minimums encoder there is just to adjust the minimums, and then if you push reset, which is the button in the middle there, it'll just set them back to 0. And same thing for the barometer. You can set your barometric pressure, and then if you press standard, it'll switch it over to 29.92, or it'll show STD on the display. Alright, and on top of this I have my Saitek switch panel, which, like I mentioned before, the auto brakes are controlled by what used to be the ignition switch, and I have assigned many of the other buttons for different things for the Zibo, because as I said before, all the lights are controlled by my overhead panel, so I don't use any of the bottom switches here, which are supposed to be for the lights. I don't use them for that, at least on the Zibo I don't. And my gear lever handle there, I do use it still for the gear on the 737 and on every other plane that has the retractable landing gear. And this little panel here is just another little Frankenstein, you know, with a bunch of different things. I have the transponder ident button, and of course you see the transponder light, you know, every time it flashes. I have the window wiper switch, the fuel flow reset switch, and you can also momentarily push down to see how much you have used. And then the annunciator light switch, which also allows you to go to dim if you want to. And the fire warning button as well, it lights up when you're doing the fire warning test, or if you were to have a fire, it would light up, and then you could push on that one to silence the alarm. The same thing with the master caution switch over here on the EFIS. On that one right there, the master caution, it will light up when you have a master warning caution thing, and you can also dismiss it by pressing on that button, and the light will turn off. Okay, and last but not least is the little monitor here, which like I said before, I use it mainly for putting the OBS window on there, but also like when if I'm not recording or streaming and I'm flying like let's say an airplane with a GNS 530 or the 750, the GTN 750, I will put that display right there so I don't have to constantly be looking at it in the main screen. And it works out pretty good. Alright guys, so yeah, that's pretty much it for this video here. I think I answered pretty much every question I can think of regarding all my different little panels and switches and everything. So as you can see, my home cockpit is just a mashup of Saitek, honeycomb, and homemade panels, you know, with SimVim Cockpit. But so far it fits the bill. I don't think I'm gonna add anything more to it that I can think of right now, because I don't have a lot of room here, and you know, even as it is, this little setup right here takes up a very good portion of my living room. It's just a very small little place here. So I mean, it does the trick for now. You know, it makes my flying more enjoyable rather than clicking everything with a mouse. I can do most of it, you know, with buttons and switches and all that. So well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this little overview of my setup here.